it doesn't mean we don't have confidence. It is we should be confident to face the current situation and find an effective way to solve the problems. We estimate that in the coming future, there will be a downward pressure on the world economy. Of course, behind it, there are many reasons. And one of the key reasons is that regarding free trade, multilateral trading system, there are rising concerns. Liberalization of trade and facilitation of investment also impacted. Which is not helping the world economic recovery. It's also hindered people's confidence in the future development of world economy. Therefore, we believe we should firmly uphold multilateralism, free trade, in a bid to lay the solid foundation for our win-win cooperation and push forward our endeavor towards further development. Second, we all believe that under the current situation, we should further strengthen our confidence. We need to conduct communication, negotiation, and consultation to solve the issues we're facing. The issues that emerged actually require more dialogue happened. We should strengthen our communication to better understand each other. During the whole process, I believe the international organizations should play a key role. We support bilateral and also multilateral communication. So under the platform of multilateralism, so all the different parties can share their views and find the way out together. At the same time, so bilateral, multilateral, they are not in contract with each other. I believe they are quite in line with each other because they all signed a very positive signal to the market. I believe this is also what we have done for this year's 1+6 roundtable. We would like to send a positive signal to the world global society. We will firmly uphold multilateralism, multilateral trading system, international organizations. We would like to conduct more communications, dialogues, and find a way to solve the issues concerning bilateral, multilateral sides. China firmly opposes protectionism and unilateralism. And China is also willing to work with international organizations and the other parties based on the equal footing to find the solutions that are agreed by all. All in all, what we are doing is want to contribute to world stability, peace, and development. And third, during our discussion, our guests show a key interest in China's development. They would like to see a deeper integration of China's economy into the global stage. We have touched upon about current China's economic development. Right now, we making stable progress. We also face some downward pressure. However, China has available means, methods, tools to make sure China's development in economy towards a long-term, sustainable, healthier way, because we enjoyed a very large potential in human resources and other sectors. And for sure, China will not resort to massive stimulation. We will not simply rely on export or investment. China stated ourselves clearly to all the people in the meeting, and I reiterate many times that we will adopt positive fiscal policies and will further cut taxes and fees. At the same time, we will also make vigorous efforts in streamlining administrations to make an enabling environment for business activities and also motivate market entities and societies to be more creative. By adopting a prudent monetary policy, China also taking consideration regarding the SMEs in terms of hard to get financing. So we also think about the solutions to help them to fix the issues, because they are the ones to provide job opportunities. They are also the ones to drive the emerging market. So the Chinese market will continue our endeavor to release measures to help them. And at the same time, we will also expand the market access to the private sectors to come into the infrastructure sectors, so they can do the self-owned measures to come into our infrastructure sectors. The same policy is also going towards the foreign fund companies, and we also reach agreements with the foreign companies, so they will also have their 100% owned companies entering into these kind of sectors. And we will also strengthen our support regarding service sectors, financial sectors. China will boost the progress of licensing and different forms of enterprises coming to these kind of areas. So which means that public sector company or public-owned companies, private companies, and foreign companies will play at the equal footing. So we will level our playing field to all the players. They will be treated as equal. During the whole process, a stable macro environment is needed, which requires a consistent economic policies with flexible adjustment to make sure the whole environment is stable. So this is also regarding the exchange rate of RMB. I would like to underscore that China's economy in long term is positive and healthy. So our international balance is good and we have enough foreign reserves. China will not have the competition for any purpose in the exchange rate, and we have enough measures to deal with any possible impact. We have the foundation, we have the capability, we have the confidence to make sure the RMB exchange rate stay in a reasonable and stable way. We will stick to the market-oriented reform. This is something unchanged. We will create a stable and enabling business environment to attract foreign capitals, also encourage Chinese companies, especially the private companies. For effective investment. So on the basis of slashing taxes, we will further our endeavor in this regard. We already bring the benefits of 3 trillion tax savings to the companies. By doing so, we want to lend fresh impetus to the companies. We have sufficient currency flows. Start 2 years ago. Deleveraging achieve positive result. Maintaining this momentum, we will also help refinancing for real economy, especially for SMEs and private companies. So in order to give more impetus to all these firms, all in all, the potential for China is we enjoy a huge market. The backbone is we have sufficient human resources. We will further unlock our potentials to improve our talent's competitiveness. Through the cooperation between China and the world, we would like to see a win-win result. So the meeting this time should also showcase our common consensus in multilateralism, and we also would like to take this opportunity to say that China is willing to continue our cooperation with the international society in order to let the Chinese economy better integrated into the global scale. So on top of the achievements we made, the 40 years of reform and opening up, we would like to see some new results, but still need to remember China is still a developing country. Development holds the key to solve China's own issues. So China needs a peaceful international environment and stable regional environment. By strengthening the cooperation with international society, China believes it is necessary to win the future. Thank you, Premier Li. Now I would like to invite Kim Jong-kim from World Bank.
Thank you very much, everybody. As once again, for the third time, we had a very robust and good discussion. I want to thank Premier Li for continuing to organize these events. My comments, just a few quick notes. For China, we expect GDP growth this year to be 6.5%, next year 6.2%, and we expect that China will reach its indicative targets. But as Madame Lagarde will tell you, that there are some clouds on the horizon, and we do expect that emerging market and developing economies growth will be slower, and the risks are predominantly on the downside. And so our recommendations for all developing countries are fairly straightforward. First, we urge all countries to make sure that their monetary and fiscal authorities focus on reducing vulnerabilities and pursue credible commitments to both price stability and debt sustainability. Second, we think that this is extremely important for every developing country to focus on their investments in human capital. In our human capital index this year, China came out on the upper end of the middle income countries and insisted that we measure the outcomes in many of the different provinces, including the poorest ones. And given, though, the problems in many different countries in terms of childhood stunting, educational outcome, we think it's critical for developing countries at this point to focus on investing more and more effectively in human capital so they can prepare their people for the economy of the future. Finally, with the possibility that access to capital may become more difficult for many emerging market and developing economies, we have stressed that every country should really focus on creating conditions so that they will be able to crowd in more private sector financing for infrastructure investment. Finally, I've been here for about a week. I participated in the 40th year anniversary of China opening up, and noted at that meeting that China has increased its per capita income 25-fold, lifted more than 800 million people out of poverty, which is about 70% of all the people who've been lifted out of poverty. And then I shared with the group my experience of traveling to Guizhou. And Guizhou, as I was told, of course, was one of the poorest provinces in China. But in the last 5 years, their poverty rate went from 30% down to 8%, a very rapid decrease. And that decrease was on the back of e-commerce and big data. So it's now one of the great big data centers in the world. And the acceleration of access to capital, access to markets through the Taobao Village e-commerce system has brought about remarkable improvements in the poverty level. And it's also begun to bring migrants back to their hometowns. And so we met with many families, but one especially in which the husband and wife had been working in Guangzhou at jobs that they thought were very good, but then were able to come back, join the e-commerce world, and multiplied their income, family income, tenfold. And so for us, this is an example of how important trade liberalization is, because in fact what happened was that this couple was able to sell their products, the products of their family and friends in the area, globally. And so access to capital and access to the internet, access to roads, of course, and electricity led to a leapfrogging of going from situations where there's 30% poverty right into the economy of the future, with the result being dramatically reduced poverty. These are the kinds of innovations that we continue to count on China to produce. And our job, the World Bank Group, is to be a good partner and to continue to try to take these innovations and spread them all over the world. Thank you.
谢谢金庸先生。下面请国际货币基金组织总裁拉加德女士致辞。
谢谢 Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. Premier Li, I want to thank you very much, not for holding for the third time this meeting, but for giving me total comfort, having spent the day yesterday in Shanghai and the day today in Beijing, that there is total consistency of view, strong confidence, and the desire to cooperate and to so communicate to the world. And that is demonstrated equally and amply by President Xi yesterday and by you today. So thank you very much for that. It was obvious to me, and I'm sure it's obvious to many, but it's always nice to see it reaffirmed in that way. When I look at the global economy, I can say that we are still reasonably upbeat because we forecast 3.7% growth this year and next, which is roughly on a par with growth on average before the financial crisis. And it is the same as in 2010, 2011, before the crisis rebound. But it is less than what we had hoped because of the clouds that President Kim just mentioned. So I can't resist mentioning the clouds. Cloud number one is tensions on trade. Cloud number two, monetary tightening and its impact on the financial and financing costs for both sovereign and corporate and household borrowers. Cloud number three, it's the vulnerabilities of some of the emerging market economies where we don't see, at this point, a contagion, but where the most vulnerable are suffering from the two clouds that I have just mentioned. But to us, the uncertainty related to the trade situation and its governing rules is certainly the predominant factor of uncertainty, and it has led to a clear regrading of the forecast for growth of many countries. Let me say a few words about China in particular. We believe that, and we see, that the Chinese economy has continued to perform well this year. Growth has been strong, and although slowing a little bit, it remains driven by consumption and services as opposed to exports, investment, and industry. The rebalancing that was always intended by the Chinese authorities. We forecast the growth for China this year at 6.6% and 6.2% next year. Significant progress has been made on rebalancing the economy, slowing credit growth, addressing risks in the financial sector and government off-budget borrowing, and continuing to open up the economy. So this is very much in line with what the authorities have reaffirmed over the course of the recent years, which is to move from a high-speed growth to a high-quality growth. And this is more than welcome for a country which has expanded as China has expanded. But like many other countries, China is also facing external and internal pressures, including from the trade tensions between the United States and China, tightening global and domestic financial conditions. The effects on GDP from trade tensions is particularly strong for both China and the United States, respectively from our modelization and forecast at 0.6% for China, 0.2% for the United States. And that 0.6% has been taken into account when I said that the forecast for China is 6.2 for next year. In the near term, if the situation was to endure, that impact on growth would be of 0.3% for both. So in the face of that, what is our modest recommendation to China? One, stay the course. and only ease policies if and when needed. Second, allowing a moderate slowdown of growth and continued rebalancing of the economy. Only easing the overall policy stance is necessary to cushion an excessive slowdown and making sure any stimulus is pro-balancing and does not reverse the hard-won reform progress that have been made. I'm delighted to hear Premier Li Keqiang reaffirm the principle of using fiscal tools, as he has mentioned, and not use monetary tools or unleash credit, as it would be counterproductive in our view for the Chinese economy. Third, creating that level playing field which I have just heard Premier Li advocate in order to put private sector companies, state-owned enterprises, domestic players, foreign players in that level playing field where they can prosper and where the Chinese company can thrive by using the creativity, the inventiveness that they have demonstrated, in particular in the digital economy. Fourth, continue to open up the economy, as it is not only in China's best interest, but it has also added benefits in helping the rest of the world. And I'm convinced that if China actually adopts these recommendations and implements them steadily, gradually over time, but giving real indications of implementation, China will continue to grow strongly and for the benefit of the Chinese people. Thank you.
谢谢拉加德女士。下面请世界贸易组织
Madam
总干
Lagarde.
事阿泽
Now
维多
let's
先生致
welcome
辞。
Mr. Azevedo, Director General of the WTO.
Thank you very much, and I also would like to start by thanking Premier Li for this very kind invitation. This is a very important point in the calendar of the international organizations, having this conversation here with him. And it is especially notable that we're doing this at the 40th anniversary of China's opening up. The transformation of the country over that period was truly remarkable, and I'm pleased that the WTO has been a part of this historic journey. Looking ahead, I think we have to hope that the trading system will continue to play the full part that it has played in fueling growth, just as it has over the last 40 years. The global economy is or was recovering quite well from the 2008 crisis, but I think all of this could be undermined by the current tensions in global trade. The new tariffs announced this year already cover hundreds of billions of dollars in trade. Continued escalation is a possibility. But I should also note at the same time that this situation is also sparking an upsurge in support to trade and to the multilateral trading system. Many WTO members and the business community in general around the world are beginning to speak up for trade. They're beginning to speak up for the multilateral trading system. China is clearly one of them. And yesterday's opening of the China International Import-Expo was a clear example of China's leadership in this field. And as we have these conversations about how to solve these tensions, a conversation has emerged about the possibility of a reform, a modernization of the WTO. Many members are bringing forward a range of ideas in a number of areas that could help to address some of the underlying causes of these tensions that we see in global trade today. But this conversation is just starting. So we need to keep an eye on it. It's still evolving. Certainly China has a very important role to play here. One key issue in this conversation is going to be the dispute settlement mechanism and the situation of the appellate body. Without a properly functioning dispute settlement system, the whole system is put in question. But we're also discussing how to advance negotiations, how to advance and make progress in our current work. There are also conversations on transparency and notification, so there is a lot to be done. This conversation, like I said, is still beginning. What is important is to note that this situation regarding the multilateral trading system is unprecedented, but I would have to say not only in terms of risks, also in terms of opportunities. So we need significant political engagement and political will to ensure that the system is equipped to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. And I hope that this will be a conversation that leaders will have at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires. It will be an opportunity to discuss all this. We need a clear message about the need to preserve and strengthen the trading system in the interests of all countries. And I am counting on China's leadership and support and engagement to that end. Thank you.
谢谢阿泽维多先生。下面请
Thank you
经
very
合
much,
组织秘书
Mr.
长
Azevedo.
古里亚先生
Now
致
let's
辞。
welcome Mr. Gurria, Secretary General of OECD.
Let me echo our appreciation for this initiative, to Prime Minister Li for this third hosting, which makes us feel very comfortable, feel at home, Prime Minister. Thank you very much. The world economy is decelerating. We thought it was going to grow by 4% next year. We now believe it's going to grow like 3.7%. The difference is all these tariffs, all these trade tensions. The trade is now growing at 3%. It's not contracting, but it's growing very modestly, 3%. Last year, 2017, was growing at 5%. It should be growing at double the rate of the world economy. That means 7.5% to 8%. It should be the locomotive, and it is not being the locomotive for the reasons we know. So I would join in the voices of the vigorous defense of multilateralism, and in particular here, when it comes to trade, of the WTO as a place where we should solve our differences on the subject. Multilateralism is the better way. How else are we going to resolve questions like trade, investment, but also like migration or like climate change or others, if not multilaterally? Let me briefly comment on China and again join the congratulatory references to the 40th anniversary of its reforms. And it's not because 40 years ago it was decided that China should reform and open, but because it hasn't stopped reforming and it hasn't stopped opening ever since. There is a cumulative value here. And this cumulative value is what has transformed dramatically Chinese society today. I would like to share with you that today we made some contributions to what we believe could be the policies going forward as we see them from the OECD. In the case of China, and of course, we found in this dialogue with the Prime Minister that it's a whole reform, even reform of the reforms, of the past reforms. It's being updated of the reforms and changing in every possible way, and a more balanced domestic development. Then on the social side also, taking care of individuals has been a dramatic improvement on the social security side. Making the most of innovation, which is a dramatic challenge to all of us today. More openness, as the President said yesterday and the Prime Minister reassured us today, greater openness to investment, to foreign direct investment, to technology, to foreign capitals, but also facing realities like the demographic change, so important in the case of China after many, many generations of one child. Of course, that is having an impact. And then even on the concern where China has been leading when it comes to caring for the environment. So let me say, Prime Minister, we are proud to be part of this dialogue, and we have been working with China and for China with a number of your colleagues here, with many of the members of your cabinet. We will continue to do so. Your priorities will be our priorities in our work with China. And of course, we are wanting to leave you with a message about saying, count on the OECD. Thank you.
谢谢胡里亚先生。下面请
Thank
金
you,
融稳
Mr.
定理事会
Gurria.
主席
Now
卡
let's
尼先生
welcome
致辞。
Mr. Mark Carney, Chairman of the Financial Stability
Thank you.
Board.
Thank you very much. May I join my colleagues in thanking you, Premier Li, for hosting this 1+6 roundtable, for your hospitality, your leadership, and most fundamentally for demonstrating China's continued commitment to an open multilateral system that benefits all. As my colleagues' comments and yours acknowledge, that system is being tested this year by developments in trade. It's also being tested a bit by developments in financial stability, and I'll concentrate on two transitions with respect to financial stability this year. The first is the emergence of downside risk to global growth because of those trade tensions, but also because of a shift in global financial conditions from a long period of accommodative conditions to tighter conditions. This modest tightening in global financial conditions has ended a decade of capital inflows to emerging economies as a whole and resulted in sharp outflows from some of the most affected economies. And this capital flow volatility underscores the need to develop an international monetary and financial system for an increasingly multipolar world. The G20 financial reforms are part of the answer. These reforms have made the global systems simpler, safer, and fairer. And now's the time for full and timely and consistent implementation of these reforms to strengthen the resilience of each G20 country, as China has done, and also to ensure that the system as a whole can support strong, sustainable, and balanced growth. And that's why we at the FSB are focused on monitoring the implementation of those reforms, assessing how well they're working, and adjusting them if necessary. The second transition is to the structure of the financial system itself. There are fast-growing sectors in asset management and fintech which bring welcome diversity to the global system, but also potential fragilities. And we spent some time talking about how we could minimize the risks from these developments and maximize the benefits. In these discussions and in these efforts, whether it's at the FSB or at the G20, we greatly value the support and expertise of Chinese authorities who have taken decisive steps this year to address domestic vulnerabilities in the non-bank financial sector, and who have unique insights, truly unique insights on how the benefits of their dynamic fintech sector can be more widely shared. The theme of today's discussion has been how sustained and deep international cooperation can promote not just openness, but win-win economic progress, said differently, inclusive growth for all. In the context of financial stability, we've seen what can be achieved when we work together with common purpose, a simpler, safer, and fairer financial system. Now, cooperation can harness the benefits of new market structures, asset management, and fintech, while mitigating the risks. As the Premier reminded us a decade ago, the global financial sector was at the heart of the problems in the global economy. Today, the global financial system can be part of the solution as the world develops a new multilateralism that secures a more prosperous future for all of our citizens. Thank you.
谢谢卡尼先生。下面请国际劳工组织
Mr.
副
Carney.
总干事
Now
格林
let's
菲尔德
welcome
女士致辞。
Mr. Greenfield, Madam Greenfield, Deputy Director General of the International Labour
On behalf of the
Organization.
ILO, I want to thank the Prime Minister, will be the last, but I hope not the least, to thank you, Prime Minister, for convening this roundtable at such an important moment. We had an open and candid discussion about the global economy and its challenges, as well as developments in China. And the ILO stands with our fellow international organizations, as well as with China itself, in our strong commitment to the multilateral system. Although the global economy continues to grow, we did note that we're not making enough progress on creating decent employment, on increasing social protection coverage, on closing gender gaps in the labor market, and decreasing working poverty. So we're going to need bold action to create the future that we want, and particularly the future of work that we want. We believe that with the right policies in place, we can seize the opportunities that we have before us, created by new technologies, the digital economy, for example, the transition to a low-carbon planet, to boost decent employment creation and ensure fair and inclusive development. Those policies include more and better social protection, strengthened skills and lifelong learning strategies, a commitment to gender equality in the labor market, and effective wage-setting mechanisms. We believe that ensuring that the benefits of international trade and globalization are more fairly distributed and continue to contribute, even in much greater ways, to closing inequality gaps that we see, are really key to restoring faith in our open economies, and that is going to be critical for strengthening the multilateral system that we all know is under such threat right now. We congratulate China on this year's achievements on the economic and employment fronts, with strong GDP growth in the first 3 quarters and more than 11 million new jobs created over the same period. China is on track to achieve the targets of its 13th five-year plan. And the mass entrepreneurship and innovation campaign launched by the Premier is yielding positive results as well. An average of 18,000 new enterprises are registered each day. China is clearly a leader in e-commerce. And we urge attention not only to the quantity of jobs that you're creating through e-commerce, but also the quality of jobs. The ILO is ready to continue our very fruitful work with China in promoting decent work, social dialogue, and entrepreneurship through South-South cooperation. Thank you.
谢谢格林菲尔德女士，谢谢
Thank
李
you
总
very
理
much,
及国际组织
Madam
各位国际组
Greenfield.
织的
Thank
负责
you,
人。
Premier Li,
记者
and
会到
also
此结束，
thank
谢谢
you
大家。
all the guests. Thank you all.